The first question. Dear Lumpur, in one of your previous Dhamma talks, you mentioned that you once experienced yellowish and itchy skin. May I ask how you eventually overcame this condition? Thank you, Lumpur.
Oh, yeah, it's a long time ago, in my first year as a monk, when my diet was not great because I've always been a vegetarian and I was living in an area where there was not particularly much vegetarian food. You always get rice. I was living in northeast Thailand in a very poor monastery, out of the way near the Laotian border, and you always get rice, maybe a little bit of fruit, some leaves, but the rest is all meat-based, curries and fish and things. So I didn't get a lot of protein or probably didn't have a balanced diet. So that was probably the cause of it. And there was one night where I couldn't sleep a wink because my whole skin became kind of completely itchy and then started to turn yellow. And so it was suggested I go and see someone who was not really a proper doctor. They were kind of a medic living in the next village. The village we lived near didn't have one, but the next village, which was about 6-kilometre walk away, have to cross a river, walk through the forest, had a medic who had some medicines, simple medicines, a small little clinic, basically a room in the middle of a farmhouse. I walked to see him, so like walking in the heat only made the yellow itchy skin worse because it was so hot walking in the middle of the day. One of the other monks in the monastery I was living in was kind enough to guide me. I didn't know where I was going because I'd never been there before. So he was kind enough to take me, went to see this man. He gave me a little packet of white pills and said, the problem is your blood is no good, so these pills will help you. But he couldn't explain, or my language wasn't very good then, and his explanation wasn't very detailed, and there's no box or anything guiding, no guidelines. So I had a little see-through plastic bag of white pills to take back to try. And I'm not sure they really did much. So it's basically, I got through that one just through enduring, but also reflecting on karma, how this was karma, that I killed a few lives, a few animals and birds during my lay life before I was a monk. Not many, but a few. So that was my main reflection. This is one of the results of having killed possibly a fish, because I killed one fish by just letting it suffocate. Well, I was supposed to hit it on the head with a rock when I was taken fishing, and I couldn't do that. I felt sorry for the fish, so the fish was left on the side and it just suffocated, which I felt terrible about, and so I stopped fishing after that. I only did it once. But when I was having this terrible night where I was just completely itching constantly all the time, I just had this insight that, this is similar to somebody dying of suffocation. Maybe it wasn't exactly the same because it wasn't so much affecting my breathing, although it did affect the breathing a little bit. But anyway, that was my insight. It was some karma coming back for this fish that I had killed or let die. Anyway, there was no medicine. My diet didn't improve. I just kind of was patient living in that monastery. I also had terrible problems with dysentery, which I had before, and so I spent a lot of the time in the toilet, very bad diarrhea. So a few times I never had the thought I would stop being a monk, but I had the thought maybe this is not the best place for me to live because I'm just finding the diet and the dealing with this illness to do with my gut very difficult. But luckily, I was strong enough to stick with it, stick through it. And eventually I went to another monastery where the diet was slightly better and things improved, and the yellow skin, itchy skin experience never returned, although I always had poor quality blood when I lived in northeast Thailand. In those days, just as these days, they would sometimes have border skirmishes where different countries would be fighting on the Thai border, and they would regularly come to Wat Nanachat, Wat Papong to take blood from the monks, because the hospital would serve the soldiers who were getting injured on the border and always need more blood. So there was always a call out for people to offer blood. So they'd bring the blood donation unit to the monasteries regularly, and they'd always reject my blood. They do a little test on your blood before they accept it. And everyone else was happily giving their blood, and mine was always hopeless. They'd look at it and say, no, we don't want this. And I always felt a bit hard done by, because everyone who donated blood got a free Pepsi Cola, which in those days was a real treat, because you didn't get Pepsi Cola very often. They all got a Pepsi Cola and iron tablets to kind of boost them. Whereas me, I had bad blood that they didn't want, got nothing. So I always thought, that's not fair. But anyway, it's only a small thing. So it's just one of those things, bit of karma coming up. So rather than saying, I am a terrible person, I'm bad, my life is terrible, you just learn to reflect. There's a cause for this, partly diet and climate maybe, partly old karma, beings I've hurt, and this is the result. And one thing you can use when you do have bad karma giving it result, rather than getting all caught up in blaming yourself and feeling sorry for yourself, you just reflect, all karma arises, all karma ceases. However bad the karma is, it will eventually change, it will end. So you can use that reflection to help get you through. Oh, this pain, this discomfort will pass. Even if you don't know when or how quick, it will pass. And I found that a very useful reflection through the years. It still applies, doesn't it? And this is one way you use wisdom to see not self, rather than take everything very personally as me, my problem. Just reflect, it's like this, there's a set of causes and conditions, it's come up like this. As things change, these causes and conditions will subside, maybe the difficulty, the pain will subside, will end. And it usually does. If something doesn't end, well, eventually you're going to die. So that's another form of ending. So everything does arise and cease in different ways.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question. Dear Ajahn, every good or bad karma that has been done by us, we need to experience it. Could be in this life, next life, or future life to come. However, according to the Abhidharma, certain karma can become defunct, ahosi karma, which karma cannot produce its result. How can we make bad karma that have done in the past fall into this ahosi karma, which has no potential to ripen in this life or future life once and for all?
Well, determine your mind to keep the precepts and practice the Brahma Viharas, kindness, compassion, equanimity. You have to cut off your own intention to harm. That's the first and most important step. Because ahosi karma means the ending of karma, so it usually relates to hostility with another being. Could be in this life, someone you've fallen out with, could be an animal, bug, something, or it could be from a past life. And they may still be angry with you, but you're determining, I'm not going to be angry and try and get back at you. I'm not going to seek revenge. I'm not going to do anything to you. I'm going to seek a hosi karma, an ending to karma. And if that intention is really strong, sincere, and you keep it up, that can often end hostility between you and another being quite quickly. Not always, because sometimes they take their time to end from their part. There's two people involved or two beings involved, so sometimes the other side is slower, maybe. But it can work. In a way, it's just common sense. If you've got somebody angry with you and you keep being angry and trying to get back at them, well, the whole thing will probably continue, won't it? Maybe even escalate and get worse. But if you say, no, on my part, I finish, I stop, and you mentally make that aspiration to end the hostility, that's a very powerful good karma. And from that moment on, you're no longer feeding the fire that causes your or their anger. So maybe it will end. So we do this regularly in our meditation, in little rituals of forgiveness and so on. And sometimes, as I said, you can't always tell what will happen from the other side, but sometimes you see very quick, good results where even if someone's really angry and out to get you and have been for a long time maybe, but you just make this determination in your own mind and then you carry it through in your speech, your actions, no more aggression, anger, aversion, no longer backstabbing them. So it's not just up front, but it's also in the back, and most particularly in your mind. If you're clear, you no longer wish to harm them, you want an end to this. That's such a powerful karma. You often see very quick results with other people. And you have to try it, don't you? You remember, have to consider, like people say, oh, you've made your karma, that's it, you're stuck, you have to receive the fruits of karma. Well, on one hand that's true, but because a set of causes and conditions are being set in motion, and so there are results coming your way. At some point the seeds will ripen. But you remember, when you reach Nibbana, there's no more birth. So that means there can be an end to all karma. Otherwise, Nibbana and developing the path to free your mind from suffering would be impossible. Because the arahant is not reborn, therefore all their karma becomes a hosi karma. While they're still alive, they may still have old age, sickness and death to deal with, but there'll be no more after that. So whatever karma they've done, even if they've done very serious negative karma in the past, will become a hosi karma. So how is that possible? Well, they're removing all their anger and the intentions based on anger and hatred from their mind. So there's just nothing more feeding that kind of karma. And other people may not like the arahant until the last moment of their life. Maybe that's still going on. Like Angulimala is a good example. Angulimala killed so many people that even after he became a monk, enlightened monk, totally peaceful, totally at peace with the world, the majority of people who knew who he was because they knew his past were still afraid of him, angry with him, hated him because he may have killed someone they knew. So they would not feed him, they would throw rocks at him, they'd spit at him, they'd abuse him. He only survived because the other monks would share their food with him. He himself, no one wanted to give him food. So that's his past karma. In his mind, it's a hosi karma in the sense that it's just finishing until he dies, and that's it. Angulimala isn't born again, so that's the end of it. So it shows you all karma can come to an end. But if you notice you're angry in this life with someone, well, try to get to that point where you can determine to end it, make it a hosi karma. And then also in the case of maybe there's beings you've harmed in the past, past lives. You can't remember, you don't know, but may there be an end to all the old bad karma, may it come to an end. You may maybe make that aspiration in your meditation and just in your general practice.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. Can Ajahn tell the Prau Theo Lok Udon story?
Well, there's a lot to say. You can Google it. My own experience is fairly limited, but ever since I ordained, I've been, like most monks in Thailand, been aware of this being we call Prau Lok Udon, who is, I think the general agreement is he's an arahant from the past who's extended his life. So he's like a deva, protecting the sangha of monks around the world, particularly Tudong monks, forest monks. So some people say he actually is a deva as opposed to an arahant, because an arahant normally dies and that's the end of it, they don't come back. But in this case they say it's an arahant who's extended his life through his great parami, and the Buddha did say if somebody fulfills the iddhipada, the 4 iddhipadas, they can extend their life. So that might be the background for it. And so there are a few monks I've known, Lumpur Ngon, Lumpur, what's his name in Ayutthaya, Lumpur Du, a few others who seem to be very close to him, would recollect him and talk about him a lot. And then there's other monks who acknowledge he seems to be a true being, a true phenomena, but everyone has their own personal experience, so I haven't talked to everyone, but there's a general recognition that this is not just a myth or a legend, but there's some truth to it. So, one story, Lumpur Ngon was a monk who was very well-educated Thai monk, lived up in Pijit, towards northern Thailand. He used to talk a lot about Prau Lok Udon, and I think on a few different occasions this monk, Prau Lok Udon, appeared to him and taught him different things, could speak in different languages, could help him understand other languages. One of the reasons, one of the things they say Prau Lok Udon he's an arahant with the Patisambhida yanas, which is like the arahant with the most skills in psychic powers and the ability to teach the Dhamma. Patisambhida yana is like this ability to teach people who don't even speak your own language. They say Lumpur Cha had a little bit of this. Why did he manage to speak teach so many people when he couldn't speak English or any other language other than Thai and Laotian? Maybe he'd been developing a lot of Patisambhida in his past lives. It's just this ability to communicate both with sharp intellect and sharp wit, but also with the heart. Teaching people with the heart, sometimes you know how to speak, what to do to get them to understand Dhamma. Sometimes the Dhamma can be communicated beyond words, or it's slightly different than just books and audio. There's other ways it can be communicated. So Prau Lok Udon is famous for this as well, and Lumpur Ngon was often sent by the Thai Sangha to be a representative to things like the UN, various religious interfaith groups, UN religious conferences and things, and sometimes Prau Lok Udon, they say, would help him to get his point across or to communicate with people who are maybe not familiar with Buddhism. As I said, he was supposed to be like the guardian of forest monks, And there's one time I was on Tudong in northern Thailand, Chiang Mai, a place called San Kampang, staying in the forest, and one night, beautiful moonlit night, I was staying at the foot of a mountain called Doi Indra's mountain. Indra is Lord of the Gods, who also supports Buddhist practitioners. Just walking meditation about 10 p.m. at the foot of Indra's mountain, an amazing whitish green light came up on the mountain, filled the whole mountain for just 30 seconds or no more than a minute. But a very unusual light. And then having seen this light and thought, oh, that's an unusual light, thinking maybe a deva or something. And then I noticed this monk sitting on a log right next to where I was walking in the forest. White skin, he's Asian, but white skin, skinny, dark coloured robes, white hair. Just sitting meditation on the log next to where I was walking. And he was there for quite a while, and then he disappeared. So I thought, this is someone important. And then I later talked to Ajahn Kalyano, and he'd previously been staying in a similar area, similar place. He said, yeah, I saw him too, Prakrute Udon. So seems to be he was looking after that area perhaps. And there's other stories like this. I won't go on all night, but nevertheless, he has a guiding influence, protective influence over Buddhist meditation monks and probably lay people as well, but particularly monks.
Sadhu. Lompo. The next question. Dear Ajahn, if you can kindly explain about metta meditation progression, when the separation of the meditator and the rest of the world breaks down, how to contemplate or progress from that point onwards?
Well, as a practice of samatha, the idea is to make your mind one-pointed on the object of metta, goodwill for oneself, for others. Unwavering, completely one-pointed to the point where the mind merges with that object. So there's no distraction. So one can attain jhana doing that. But then the Buddha said, contemplate the impermanence of the bliss, the happiness, the rapture, the goodness of that thought, because it is a very good, powerful, good thought. Contemplate the impermanence, the causal nature of it. It's a conditioned thing, it's not a self. Because if you don't do that, you don't do your vipassana, you'll tend to think, I am someone with a lot of metta, because you have a lot of metta, but you'll attach to it with a sense of self, which happens. And when you die, maybe you're reborn as a deva with a lot of metta, but the sense of self is still solid and there. So metta meditation still has to become a basis for practicing vipassana. And on the way to developing strong metta in your meditation, you have to contemplate like this. As you develop metta for yourself, for others, just be careful of this sense of self that comes up with conceit usually. And I have metta and they don't, or I'm special because I have a lot of metta. I'm this, I'm that. This is one of the subtle attachments that comes up as you practice metta meditation. One of the coarser, more obvious ones is you fall in love with everyone, you attach to everyone, fall in love with them, become too caught up in other people through the connectivity of metta. Like you say, this, as you practice metta, the sense of difference between you and other people breaks down. So you're just, sometimes when a monk has well-developed metta, we say, oh, they're just like a ball of metta. It's like a kind of floating ball of metta, and this metta comes out, and everyone in the area of that person feels it. And many times I've experienced that as well. And that's totally in all directions and without boundaries. So we call it apamanya, without boundaries. So the sense of me and you disappears. So it can be a basis for good insight into not self. But it can also lead to clinginess. With metta you cling if you're not careful. You cling to the objects of your metta. Even though you're breaking down boundaries, there's still people within the sphere of your metta, say, and you can attach to them. So then there's sadness. So like even monks, nuns, lay people, we know like in the time of the Buddha, Lady Visakha has obviously had amazing metta for lots of people, but when her beloved nephew died, she was distraught. She's a Sotapanna, but she still has a lot of emotion because she's lost someone she obviously had a lot of metta for. Someone who's an anagami probably doesn't have that anymore. An anagami won't fall into the strong emotion if they lose someone connected to them. They've had metta for them, but they just know, oh, this is just the way of things. An anagami and arahant, what they say will not be overcome by emotion, the emotion of metta. And then the anagami still has a subtle conceit, the arahant doesn't. So these are things to contemplate, even practicing metta, which is a good thing, a wholesome thing. You still have to be careful of attachments, subtle attachments that can come up. And it has to be practiced in conjunction with developing panya, insight, vipassana, insight. We can develop metta, panya, vimutti, liberation through the practice of metta, but with panya, contemplating impermanence, contemplating not self. There's no person who has metta in the end. It's just a quality of mind, not to be attached to.
Sadhu. Lumpur. The next question. Are certain spots, for example, Pukao Kwai, Mount Popa, and Phunam Kulen, thin spots between different realms? Do high-level devas and nagas congregate in certain places, and are only accessible in deep meditation at that certain place? Or can adept meditators in non-Buddhist countries communicate with them?
Not sure we can really say much about this, but many things are possible. I wouldn't say anything is off the table or on the table, but there definitely do seem to be places in the world that are more spiritual than others. So, where I lived, Wat Map Jan seemed to be a very spiritual place, and many teachers said that monastery is like the hill is like a doorway to the different realms, like you say, the Deva realm, Naga realm. A particularly good place, or not so good place, but it's a place that is close to the heaven realms. Obviously, India is like that. The Buddha, they say all Buddhas become enlightened at the foothills of the Himalayas, born there as a bodhisattva, practice there, enlightened there. And then other places, like you mentioned, there are a few places around in the world, not just in Thailand, but obviously my experience is Thailand, but other parts of the world that seem to be very spiritual and connected to the Deva realm. So somewhere like Sri Pada in Sri Lanka, I would say is like that. And probably some of those sacred mountains in China. There's a few places. maybe that's all I can say at the moment.
Sadhu. Lumpo. The next question. Venerable Lumpo Kalyano, may I ask for your clarification on the meanings of the Pali terms Chattari Purisa Yugani and Atta Purisa Puggala?
Well, I'm not a Pali scholar, but from my humble understanding, Chattari, 4, Purisa Yugani, the 4 kinds of people, and then the 8 kinds of people. It's just dividing what we call Arya Pugala, Sotapanna, Sakodagami, Anagami, Arahant, the 4 types of Arya Pugala. Each one is different from the others and different from an unenlightened being, a Patujana. So there's these 4 kinds of beings that we should revere, follow, hold up, because they've already progressed along the path to Nibbana. But each of the 4 is different, so hence the 4 types. 8 types is just a further subdivision. There's the, say, a Sotapanna has practiced Magga, developed Magga, and then experienced Pala. Sakodagami Magga, Sakodagami Pala, Anagami Magga, Anagami Pala, Arahant Magga, Arahant Pala, the path and the fruit. So each person is kind of subdivided into the one who is on the path and then the one who experiences the fruit. And when the moment comes for that change, it's like there'll be a moment of path and then a moment of fruit, and then there's no reversal, there's no going back. So a Sakodagami, a once returner, never goes back to being a Sotapanna. Sotapanna never goes back to being Patujana, unenlightened. They only go forward. So once the path is complete, the fruit moment happens, and that's it. And then they're not only are they experiencing the fruit, now they're experiencing the path of the next level. So Anagami, or Sakodagami, say, experiences the fruit of Sakodagami, once returner, and then they're moving towards the path, Magga, of the Anagami. So it's a progress, a refinement of the mind based on shedding or letting go of the different fetters, 10 fetters which are gradually let go of. So it's just a precise definition, because it seems the Buddha was very clear and keen that we should be clear on this, that each of the Arya Pugalas are different people. The mind is different. Certain things are gone, certain things have arisen, certain things have gone. So it makes you different. So the way we talk about different people in Buddhism is not so much, who you know, what you like, your character, your personality. It's more what defilements are there and what have gone, what have been abandoned, from unenlightened all the way to Arahant. And the Buddha is just saying you're different. When you're unenlightened, you're one way. When you're Sotapanna, you're another. When you're Sakodagami, even though they're linked, related, your mind is actually different. So you're a different person. It's one way of looking at it. But my explanation may be a bit limited. You can always study up on this as well.
Sadhu. Lumpo. Next question. Dear Venerable Lumpo, is there any advice that can be given for cultivating the skill to see the breakup of consciousness? Thank you.
Well, all knowledge and skill in Buddhism is based on a good foundation of sila. Never underestimate or ignore that. Purity of sila underscores purity of mindfulness in the practice of satipatthana, and the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path are all practiced together. So right view, right speech, right action, and so on. So that all of them are important, and this gives you insight into seeing the conditioned nature of a person, what we call 5 khandhas, so body, feeling, perception, thought formations, sense consciousness. The five khandhas are seen as impermanent, as not self, more a process of causes and conditions arising and ceasing. So cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path will give you insight into anicca in your own body and mind. And that, if you perfect that, practice that a lot, get more and more knowledge doing that, then there'll be less and less that delude you. So even to the last moment of life, you can maintain mindfulness and see everything from a place of wisdom, that it's not self, it's not me, it's not myself. And that applies to both body and mind, and then the activities of the mind, consciousness arising, ceasing, feeling, perception arising, ceasing, and so on. So the Noble Eightfold Path, cultivate that thoroughly, cultivate it well. As the Buddha would say, bhavita bahulikata, do it a lot. We all need to do more. And we don't like it when people tell us that, because we're all feeling tired and fed up with life. But unfortunately, the only way out is to do it more, do more practice.
Sadhu. Lumpur. The next question. What happens if a practitioner becomes an abbot or teacher when they are a sotapanna? When they progress through the various stages and start to see things more and more as empty phenomena, how do they create a self to teach without suffering over it?
Not sure they need to create a self. If you have drawn the short straw and end up being the senior monk in a smaller or bigger monastery, what we call an abbot or teacher, whether you're a sotapanna or you become a sotapanna, the whole point is you're seeing your, what we call the self in light of the three characteristics. You're not creating a self, you're de-creating a self, deconstructing the self-view. That's probably why you can be in that role. It's a selfless role, whether you're a sotapanna or not. It certainly can be a vehicle towards stream entry, or it may be the result of stream entry and you're in a position to help other people. Because it's a selfless role if you're abbot. I think I can safely say if you ask any other abbot, they'll say the same thing, that you have to serve the community and you have less time and energy available for yourself. So that's why it would be ideal if you're Arya Pugala, or at least have very strong samadhi, so you're not going to get lost as you do this job. But it's a job that involves sacrifice for others, helping others. But if you're smart about it, well, you keep some time and energy available for your own practice so you can continue to practice for yourself, even though you're helping others. And if you do create suffering over it, and that's quite possible, the whole point is if you're established in your practice, you know what you have to do to abandon this suffering and end this suffering, get beyond it. So it doesn't matter so much. So ideally you don't become abbot or teacher until you're an arahant, but that's not always possible, especially in this day and age. You become a monk now for just 1 year or 1 month and already they want you to teach. Everyone wants teachers these days, so it is one of the dangers particularly for new monks, young monks, doing too much teaching too quickly and not seeing the sense of self that's forming, and therefore not seeing the causes for their suffering. So it's something to be careful of, particularly any monks, nuns listening, be careful of that. When I was brought up, or trained as a young monk, I was trained not to teach, not to talk. And living with Ajahn Chah, didn't teach. Even if people asked me, I'd keep it short and brief. And then when I was living with Ajahn Anand, the same. I didn't give public talks or go out teaching. He was the teacher and I was living and learning with him. And even when I came to Australia, it wasn't me coming to Australia as a teacher. I came as the assistant to Luang Por Anand, who was the teacher. But having settled here, I've had to become the teacher. But my priority is my practice, so the teaching I give is what I can share on top of or in addition to my own practice. And my job is to make sure I don't let my practice falter or degenerate as I teach, as I help.
Sadhu. Luang Por. The next question. Dear Luang Por Kalyano, I have a question regarding the Sotapanna, stream enterer. When it is said that a Sotapanna has a maximum of 7 or more rebirths, does this mean they will continue through 7 rebirths sequentially? Or is it simply an upper limit, and they may attain Nibbana in fewer than 7 lives? I would be grateful if you could please elaborate.
Oh, of course, you could attain, if someone has attained Sotapanna this life, they could attain Nibbana this life. One life is enough. They call ekapichi. So it's, you could say that's the Buddha. The Buddha attains Sotapanna, but straight away he goes on to Nibbana all in one life. And there are some people like that, you might call the fast track. A lot of effort, a lot of parameis, a lot of accumulated good qualities, so their progress is very swift. Break down all the obstacles, the delusions, let go of all the attachments. But others, like you say, sometimes they say 3 lives is common, or 7 lives. And these are just numbers. Who knows? I mean, is there anyone up there counting? I don't know. But what it means is there's now a time limit on your practice until Nibbana. And if you're practicing very hard and you have the right qualities, maybe you can do it this life, or at most 7 lives, they say. Just means you're very close to Nibbana and it's going to happen quite soon. But how soon, exactly how things go, is going to vary from person to person, isn't it? And even a Sotapanna can get a little bit sidetracked, not far, but a little bit sidetracked. Maybe teaching, distracted, maybe a little bit lazy, they say. But it's only small obstacles, not insurmountable obstacles. It's just small bumps along the way. But the important thing is, they've established their mind in right view. The sati, the samadhi is established, the insight and the way of contemplating experience is established, so they're seeing the impermanent nature of body and mind all the time. So old kilesas may pop up from old karma, but they're seen as a kilesa, they're seen as something that leads to suffering, seen as craving attachment to be abandoned, and then they are abandoned. But it depends on their karma how quickly that process of abandoning kilesa takes, how long it takes. Some people shorter than others.
Sadhu. Luang Por. The next question. How do out-of-body experiences fit into samadhi experiences and the forest tradition framework? How does this relate to antarabhava, or the in-between rebirth state?
Not an easy question. It's not framed easily in an easy way to answer, but out-of-body experiences, many people have them. People who don't even meditate or have nothing to do with the forest tradition can have an out-of-body experience. Sometimes extreme stress, extreme fear, extreme trauma, like car accidents and things, surgery and things. There's a whole range of reasons why people have them, but then also meditators have them. Whether they're Buddhist meditators with right view or they're a meditator with no experience of Buddhism, that's also possible. And what it means and what it does for that person will vary depending probably on a number of other factors, like how much wisdom and understanding they have, whether they have an experienced teacher to help them as well. So you hear a whole range of things. Some people have an out-of-body experience and it gives them really good insight, say, into the impermanence of the body, in the sense of this body is not me, not myself. Other people have out-of-body experience and they kind of as if go floating around looking for things, and they want to see beings in other realms and have those kind of experiences and are very fascinated by the whole thing and maybe want to repeat it. And you meet some people who do repeat this. They've done it once and then they try and do it again, and they do it again. Some people, it happens in their meditation. Some people, they just go into sleep at night and it happens. There's a whole variety of experiences here. As you would expect, the world is full of different people with different backgrounds, different karma. But the reason we know about people's out-of-body experiences obviously is that their mind comes back to their body, connects, and that can happen in an instant. It's not like some long-distance journey and then come back again. It can just be like that. But they're obviously still alive and they can talk about it, hence we discuss it in this way. So they didn't die, so it's not yet anything to do with being in between birth and death or anything like that necessarily. I mean, it could be, but for many people it's not. So more important, I would say, is we say the merit of a person, the good qualities, the good karma they've accumulated will help them at the time of death to gain a good, quick, good rebirth. Sometimes the presence of Sangha helps, knowing Sangha, having Sangha to spread metta and help at the time of death. Sometimes our own good karma will lead to a good rebirth, quick rebirth. But then obviously some people, they don't have a lot of merit. Their mind is full of fear, confusion, attachment at the time of death. So then you get being reborn in other realms, or not yet reaching a good realm yet, a wholesome destination. So, I'm not sure there's a lot I can say about this, but generally what did the Buddha say? The Buddha encouraged us to practice Kaya Gata Satipatthana, mindfulness directed to the body. So in most cases, if people start having out-of-body experiences, the encouragement is come back to your own body as quick as you can. Establish mindfulness on the breath, or recite Buddha, bring your mind back to your own body, contemplate your 5 khandhas, see them as impermanent, as not self. The mind, it can happen in samadhi. If it's not guided by wisdom, as I said, we tend to get fascinated with different aspects of meditation, the bliss and rapture, visions, probably the most common thing, seeing visions, seeing visions of other beings, other places. That fascination, basically like going on holiday. So that can be very distracting. It can become a deeply ingrained habit, and it can waste a lot of time. It can confuse people and possibly, in the worst situation, maybe even make them a little bit unstable, have an impact on their mental health. So generally not encouraged by teachers, generally encourage you just to stay within your own body. And if you feel you're having an out-of-body experience, if you're sitting meditation, just open your eyes. If you're asleep at night, just recite something like Buddha or go to your breathing or something like that. Bring your mind back to your own body. Generally, they're not encouraged.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. Dear Lumpur Kalyano, I noticed a smaller white figure with red lips positioned in front of the white Buddha behind you. Could you kindly explain who or what this figure represents or its significance? I happened to see this white figure during meditation some time ago, after a golden light appeared and it had the Buddha's hair. Thank you very much for your guidance.
So we're talking about one of these figures on the altar behind me, like there's some dead dough there, I'm not sure you can see. Can we just see my picture? Or we're talking about, is it the small Buddha? Oh, the Burmese style one. Oh, well, I have a Burmese style Buddha behind me that currently I'm blocking because I'm sitting on a chair for this session. When I'm sitting on the floor, you'll see it. It's comes from Burma, Myanmar, made of Burmese marble, white marble, and it's a very common style that you'll find from Myanmar, sometimes northern Thailand. So it was given to us by Lumpur Opat, who just turned 95 the other day, had his birthday, who's originally from Myanmar, Burma, and he gave it to us as a gift when he first came to this monastery 2012, so a long time ago now. So we're honored to have a Buddha from Lumpur, and it's sitting behind me.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. Could a monk who is a Sakodagami theoretically commit a Sangha-disesa? What about lay Sakodagamis at the time of the Buddha? Could they break their sila?
Normally you would say an Aryapugala wouldn't break such a serious rule, what we call a grave offence in the Vinaya. I mean, why would they? So when you say theoretically, well, yeah, I guess in theory many strange things can happen in the world, but normally a Sakodagami has less lustful attachment and lustful desire than a Sotapanna, and certainly than an unenlightened person. Often their lustful desire manifests just as images in the mind, and there's very little, so much less of the physical manifestation, strong physical feelings of the body and pleasure seeking and all of that. It's more just mental. So then there wouldn't really be much need or purpose to break such an extreme rule. So normally, no, they don't do that. The same for lay people. I mean, the Tripitaka and particularly the commentaries are full of all kinds of strange examples of people supposed to be anagamis then doing something strange or unusual. So who knows, maybe there's some some variation. But generally speaking, they have weakened attachment to the body and therefore weakened lust, weakened anger. So therefore they're not doing coarse things like breaking Vinaya rules of a monk, or as a lay person doing things that are following extreme lust, that might make you break precepts. They wouldn't do that. They would be peaceful enough and uninterested in that side of life, be bored with it or see the suffering of it.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. Dear Lumpur, could you advise how do we maintain mindfulness whilst being busy doing our tasks at work? Thank you, Lumpur.
Good question. Generally, try to make the task you're doing the focus of your mindfulness. So we practice mindfulness with this other quality, sampajanya, sati sampajanya. So sati means to recollect or keep in mind. So say you're typing you can make that the object of your mindfulness. I'm typing a certain thing, whatever the job is that you're doing on the screen, or I'm washing dishes, or I'm sweeping up, vacuuming, whatever. Whatever the task is, that's the center of your mindfulness. So you're paying attention to that job. But then sampajanya is also coming in to keep you focused, and there may be different movements involved, different aspects to that task that you have to be aware of. You know what you're doing, and you know why you're doing it, what the purpose is, what the goal is, how to do it well. You have virya as well, you put effort in. So say you're vacuuming a floor, well, the virya helps you to get to the end of that job. Just give up halfway through. Sati keeps you paying attention. And with sati, you gain a lot of equanimity, more just unbiased awareness. So maybe as you're doing a job, it may be frustrating, there may be obstacles, you may feel tired, there may be different things coming up within you or within the world around you as you're doing that job. But it helps you to keep an evenness of mind, so you're not swayed too much by these different aspects of life that are impinging on you at that time. So it will help you to do a good job and to complete the task, keep you focused doing that. But then there are other qualities you need to develop as well. So wisdom is another one, or what we call panya. So you may be feeling some stress as you're doing this job, so that's something to keep an eye on. Maybe you get annoyed, someone else is not cooperating, you're doing a job that involves other people and they're not cooperating, or they're giving you a hard time, so you may get annoyed. That's an unwholesome state of mind. So wisdom may be teaching you how to let go of that as you're being mindful doing this job. But it's like an additional thing you have to deal with. So many aspects of the Dhamma will come in to help you do your job. It's not just mindfulness alone, but the mindfulness keeps you focused on the job. So it's like primary, it's the central part of it. But then you see what else you need to do to complete the job, deal with the obstacles, deal with you personally, how you feel, what's going on, and deal with other people. Say it's a job that involves talking, where you need to practice right speech. So mindfulness will help you pay attention to what you're saying, and you reflect with sammaditthi. Is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? What's going on here? Do I need to speak? Should I listen? Who is it I'm speaking to? What's going on? There's a whole range of things that we need to consider maybe, but mindfulness allows wisdom and understanding to grow and function because you're paying attention. When you're not paying attention, nothing else works, does it? It's like your mind is not there, so then these other qualities won't be there either. If mindfulness is there, then all the other good qualities can join. So it's like the leader, it's the leading quality.
Sadhu, Lumpur. The next question. Dear Lumpur Kalyano, you mentioned a venerable arahant who extended his life. May I kindly clarify, did he prolong his current human life, or had he already attained arahantship, entered Nibbana, and then consciously chose to return to the human realm? Separately, have you personally encountered individuals who have attained arahantship, yet chosen to return to the cycle of rebirth out of compassion for sentient beings to help them on the path?
Normally, arahants do not return to the cycle of rebirth. That's the whole point. They've reached Nibbana, and Nibbana is beyond the cycle of rebirth, birth and death. It's the deathless. But an arahant, as a human being, if they have amazing qualities that they've developed over a long time, perfected various qualities, they say they may be able to extend their life for good reason, basically to protect the religion and people practicing the religion. So it's almost like a deva or a bodhisattva, but they're not, they're an arahant. But this is all conjecture, theory. legend, myth. It's very difficult to discuss with concrete facts and evidence. So we'll sit here all night and some people will believe and some will not. So I'm not sure how fruitful it is, but simply speaking, that's what, in the case earlier this evening, we were talking about. Some people say Luang Por Chah displayed that kind of thing. He lived only 10 years longer than when he had his first initial health breakdown. But many people said he lived much longer than the average person would in that similar situation with similar illnesses and conditions. Maybe that was due to his special ability to control his mind and use his mind to keep the body going a bit longer. Similarly, they said that with Luang Tao Mahabua, who was about 1997, went to see him on his deathbed, and everyone was convinced he was about to die. And then he seemed to pick up after that. I mean, they say he got some special medicine from China, things picked up, and then he lived another 10 years, was it? Can't remember how many years, but many years. Again, miraculously seemed to extend his life longer than what had been predicted or what seemed to be occurring during the late 90s. So these kind of things seem to happen from time to time with certain well-practiced monks. But it's very difficult to say much about how it works and who is and who isn't and all these details. There's not a lot of detailed evidence we can discuss. But perhaps in terms of understanding, an arahant wouldn't return to the cycle of rebirth. A bodhisattva or someone building parami over many lifetimes does. I mean, that's the whole point. They've got a very long-term goal in mind, either to be a Buddha or what we call a Savaka, a disciple of the Buddha. And that might mean life after life, practicing, helping people, learning the Dhamma, improving their own skills and knowledge for many, many lifetimes, countless lifetimes. There are those beings, yes, but they're not arahants. They're parami builders. They're bodhisattvas or Savaka, people who have made a determination to become a Savaka.
Sadhu, Luang Por. The next question. Dear Luang Por Kalyano, may I kindly inquire, does one need to perfect all 30 Tingsa parameis in order to attain arahantship? Or is there flexibility in the path leading to full arahantship?
Well, arahants are Savakas, they're the students of the Buddha. So generally it's the Buddhas over the generations, it's Buddhas who have developed all 30 parameis on every level. It's really 10 parameis on 3 levels, so 10 times 3 is 30. So basically they've been doing it longer than the students, the Savakas, the arahants. They've been doing it longer, but the actual experience of Nibbana and arahantship is the same arahant, same insight into the Four Noble Truths. But particularly in teaching and helping other people, well, a Buddha has so much more ability to help others, to establish the religion, to teach others, and teach successfully all the way to Nibbana, that an arahant may teach as well, but their knowledge and their skill in teaching is going to be limited compared to a Buddha. And that's the main thing. But the 10 parameis are perfected in anyone who reaches Nibbana, they say. But the depth of them and the sort of strength of them for a Buddha is going to be more than a Savaka, although a Savaka is not to be looked down on in any way. Savaka, arahants, particularly what we call the 80 asceti Savakas, the 80 leading arahants in the time of a Buddha, have amazing parami. They're not the same barami as the Buddha, but still amazing barami, amazing ability to teach, guide people to the Dhamma and all the way to Nibbana.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. Dear Lompo Kalyano, my mother wishes to inquire whether female lay people are permitted to visit the monastery to meet with you and discuss the Dhamma.
Easy one, yes. Females and males visit every day between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. So the main teaching time is like 11:30 to 12:30 every day.
Sadhu Lompo. You may ask your question.
Hello, Ajahn. I am from Hindu background. I grew up in India. I started practicing 2 years ago, and every time I listen to talks and my aspirations to renounce lay life becoming more. So I started to live the life in more precept way, keeping 5 to 7 precepts day-to-day life, practicing everyday meditation with my main interest at the moment. But when I told to my mother about my aspirations, she said, I didn't raise you to abandon me, because she's from Hindu background. She doesn't trust in the teachings and what kind of monk will allow you to go beyond your mom's wishes. So I feel like I'm stuck with this, and I'm unable to convince my mom in a way where I can live the life and go beyond. But at the same time, when I stick to lay life and practicing, it is more tiring, trying to keep the precepts very self-restrained, not to follow the peer pressure, the world around. So it's making me tiresome. The practice sometimes becomes very difficult. It gives you a lot of doubt, gives you sometimes why I'm doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. So then I felt like I should go leave the lay life and try practicing like in a monastery setting. But the family circumstances doesn't allow me at the moment.
Because time is short, maybe we'll leave your question there. I'll just say a few comments on what you've said. So, yeah, every single monk, I would say, has this issue to deal with, and some it goes more smoothly than others. Every monk has parents who love them. Generally speaking, their parents around who love them, see that becoming a monk is the wrong thing, giving up the education, giving up the chance to have grandchildren, make money, go pursue worldly success. Most people in the world see it that way, and that's understandable. But some monks have a very strong urge, or have had a very strong urge, to lead the lay life, and you just have to see for yourself whether that becomes true. And if you do leave the lay life and become a monk, you have to trust that what you're doing is a very good thing. Trust in the good intention, and your goal is to do good for yourself and then for the benefit of others. And that trust in your good intention and your understanding will help override the difficulties of dealing with parents who are not supportive or not sympathetic or not wishing you to do it. But the actual details, each individual has got to work it through, and some people can and some people can't, and some people just can't leave their parents if their parents are dead set against it. So it's really up to the individual. But having said that, there's other ways you can approach it. You can also spend temporary times in monasteries, not as a monk, but as what we call an 8 preceptor, anagarika, for 1 week or 1 month or 3 months or even 1 year or 2 years. You can say, Mom, I'm going to do this for a year and then I'll talk to you and we'll decide whether to continue or not. There's different ways to present it to parents so that it's not like, I'm leaving home forever and I'll never see you again and that's the end of it. You don't have to be too fatalistic or finite. You don't have to say it's for life. You just say you're trying something temporarily, and maybe even try it temporarily many times to get them used to the idea. You go to the monastery for a week or a month or something, and then you come home, and then you go again, and then you come home. There's different approaches. But there's no one answer here. You have to work it out for yourself with your parents and see. So for me, it became clear to be a monk just through meditating, practicing meditation every day, considering things like precepts, the spiritual path of the Dhamma, path of the Dhamma, just seeing how, like you say, like it's difficult to practice in daily life, in lay life. So then it was a natural step for me to do that. And my parents weren't that supportive, but they didn't absolutely forbid me. They just said they didn't think it was a good idea. But later they did think it was a good idea. So, people change. But for me, the desire to become a monk became very strong because I was practicing meditation regularly. So maybe that's one avenue to pursue, develop a strong personal meditation practice, keep the precepts, listen to the Dhamma, read the Dhamma, associate with fellow Dhamma practitioners more and more, and then maybe it'll only just be one step to go from home life into the monastic life.